Where does America get most of our oil? From Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Venezuela? That's what people think. Where does most of our oil come from?
Middle East and the Gulf of Mexico.
When we buy gasoline, do we help fund terrorism?
Yes, of course.
It pumps money into areas you don't necessarily want the money to go.
And so our political leaders tell us
one of the most serious long-term challenges facing our country is dependence on oil, especially oil from foreign lands.
This country is on the path towards more energy independence, and that's good for everybody. It's good for people's pocketbooks. It's good for the environment. It's good for our national security. We don't want our economy dependent on something that happens on the other side of the world.
Right, so we should become energy independent. Frank Gaffney of the Center for Security Policy agrees with that. But Jerry Taylor from the Cato Institute says independence is nonsense. Jerry, nonsense?
If we were energy independent, there was a supply disruption in the Middle East, it would increase the price of Middle Eastern crude and American crude pretty much the same amount. It's a global market. Oil's a fungible commodity. Energy independence does not protect you against bad stuff that happens abroad.
But at least we stop funding terror.
There is no correlation between how much money goes to the Middle East and terrorist attacks. You can look at the data and find that. For instance, Al-Qaeda built up its infrastructure and its military capability in the 1990s. Oil prices in the 1990s were in the $20 to $25 a barrel range. It didn't take very much for them to do that. If you look at the data with regards to terrorist attacks, fatalities from terrorism, and oil profits, you find there's no correlation whatsoever. Dollars are not the limiting factor for global terrorism.
Frank?
I would argue that if you denominate energy independence in terms of oil, Jerry's right. If you want to change the game entirely, you denominate it in what we might call fuel choice. You had an earlier segment about ethanol. That's an expensive way to get fuel choice. An inexpensive way to get fuel choice is by taking the abundant quantities of natural gas that we have now and turning it into methanol and making it a transportation fuel, which when available to the consumer as an option, in addition to gasoline, in addition perhaps to ethanol, you suddenly create conditions that actually can destroy OPEC. Think about Boston. There's a mosque up in Boston that was an incubator for the terrorist attack there. That mosque has its financing from Saudi Arabia.
Yeah,
that's
Jerry,
the kind of thing that makes a real difference in our security.
I want to believe it because I believe almost everything that Cato suggests. But
bad idea.
The idea that you stop throwing money to these madrasas in Saudi Arabia that teach people that America